Welcome back to another episode of Road to William. Today, we're focusing on the late Sam Nordquist. He was a black trans man from Minnesota, and he traveled to a part of New York to visit a girlfriend he had met online. They were falling in love, and so he decided to go visit her in September. He never returned home to his family. We're gonna, continue to follow this story because they're supposed to be back in court in September. So we're gonna be following this to make sure Sam Nordquist gets justice that he deserves. I've seen some rallies, vigils in honor of Sam, so that's dope. I think we should just continue to say his name and continue following the story and never forget what happened because if we don't talk about the stories, we're just hiding them and we're just continuing this vicious cycle of people attacking trans people. And so we're going to dive into some numbers, some percentages, some data. Some people like data. We're going to go through the whole story and I'm going to dive into some things. So bear with me. Yeah, so we're going to dive into it. So I'm going to start with GLAAD.org because grief and fond remembrance of slain transgender man Sam Nordquist. On February 13th, 2025, the body of Sam Nordquist, a black transgender man, was found in Yates County, New York. Investigators stated that Sam was killed after suffering months of prolonged physical and psychological torture. Sam was 24 years old, worked as a group home aide, and had been reported missing by his family on February 9th. He would give you the shirt off of his back. Very kind, loved his family, loved his nieces and nephews. Very outgoing, worked hard. Sam's mother, Linda, told WROC. New York State Police charged 5 people Friday with murder in Nordquist killing. Officials investigating Sam's murder issued a statement over the weekend. At this time, we have no indication that Sam's murder was a hate crime. To help alleviate the understandable concern that his murder could be a hate crime, we are disclosing that Sam and his assailants were known to each other, identified as LGBTQ+, and at least one of the defendants lived with Sam in the time period leading up to the instant offense. Law enforcement's swift action in investigating the horrific act is welcomed, but experts warn against prematurely dismissing hate crime charges. Investigators are urged to consider that anti-LGBTQ hate can originate from any individual, irrespective of their connection to the victim or personal identity. Multiple studies have shown, for example, that transgender and gender nonconforming people are at increased risk of experiencing intimate partner violence. New York Governor Kathy Hochul issued a statement reading in part, the charges against these individuals are sickening, and all New Yorkers should join together to condemn this horrific act. There must be justice for Sam Nordquist. New York Attorney General Letitia James responded as well, stating in part, this is beyond horrifying, and those responsible for this terrible act must be held accountable. Uh, Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota, whose record in office and whose campaign for vice president included support of transgender adults and youth, posted, this is deeply disturbing. Minnesota stands with our LGBTQ neighbors against this unthinkable crime. I'm grateful to the law enforcement agencies investigating. Gwen and I send our deepest condolences to Sam's family and community. In Sam's home state of Minnesota, Out Trans State Representative Lee Fink shared a memorial post for Sam on her social media, including, I am sorry, Sam. You deserved a whole life full of love and joy and peace, and you instead received the cruelest violence imaginable. All of our love to Sam, to his loved ones. We will never stop fighting for our freedom, trans liberation now. The face-to-face academy where Nordquist had been a student posted a fond remembrance from classmates who described him as a friend without limits. Jade Nelson, class of December 2018, wrote, "A memory I'll always cherish is back in high school with you. I was going through a lot, and you noticed before anyone that I wasn't okay. You were still new at face to face, and we barely knew each other then, but that didn't stop you from checking in on me. You didn't even know me yet. You didn't hesitate to pull me aside and say you were there for me. I told you that you gave the best hugs. You told me that when you're down, you just try to think of things that make you happy. Outfront Minnesota and LGBTQ partners in the state issued a statement that reads, Outfront Minnesota and our community partners mourn the loss of Sam Nordquist. We mourn his loss and share our deepest sympathies with all those who were close to him. We know this arrives at a time our trans communities are facing a relentless assault of harmful policy and rhetoric across our country. We know that this landscape escalates and amplifies the individual risk of violence. Trans lives matter, and we must all commit ourselves to the work of ending violence and discrimination. In Minnesota and beyond, New York LGBTQ organization, the New Pride Agenda, issued a statement. We are devastated and enraged by the horrific murder of Sam Nordquist, a, Min- a Minnesotan, a Minnesotan whose life was brutally taken in the Finger Lakes region after enduring weeks of torture. While arrests have been made, we know this is not an isolated incident. It is a tragic consequence of the rising culture of hate in our society. We must continue to fight for a world where all LGBTQ plus people are safe, valued, and free from violence. GLAAD's president and CEO, Sarah Kate Ellis, said, Our hearts are broken over the loss of Sam Nordquist. Sam was more than just a statistic. He was a son, a brother, a friend, and a bright light in the lives of those who knew him. His life was stolen from him after enduring unspeakable cruelty. We stand in solidarity with Sam's family, friends, and community as they demand justice. We refuse to let Sam's story fade into silence. We demand accountability, we demand justice, and we demand a world where transgender people are safe, respected, and able to live freely. GLAAD's Alert Desk, which tracks incidents of anti-LGBTQ hate in the U.S., reported more than 800 anti-trans incidents in the U.S. since June 2022. These include 120 plus bomb threats, 55 plus assaults, and 30 plus cases of vandalism, specifically targeting transgender and gender nonconforming people. People of color also made up 84% of all fatal violence targeting trans and gender expansive victims since 2013, according to the Human Rights Campaign. A group of 100 people gathered in below zero temperatures on February 17th on the steps of the state capitol in St. Paul, Minnesota. The visual to celebrate Sam's life and enduring An enduring legacy will be held on Friday, February 21st at the Church of the Village in New York City. So that was the memorial they had. I know they had one out in LA, if I'm not mistaken, a while back. So here is an article, one of the articles from NBC News. It reads, Law enforcement was called 8 times to the hotel where Sam Nordquist was held captive and killed. I'm gonna read more stuff and we're gonna watch some videos. So I know I haven't gone into deep detail yet with the articles, but I have read the articles and the stuff we're about to get into. So if you're, I can probably put a disclaimer, but if you could be triggered by this or if you don't feel comfortable hearing these things, this would be the time to kind of like dip and go to the GoFundMe to support them in any way you can. And I'll put everything in the description for y'all to go support them, go support Sam's family. Um, and yes, but yeah, we're about to dive pretty deep. I don't know if this is the same article I read about, but But here we go. So Sam was at this hotel called Patty's Lodge, and his room number was 22. And that's the picture you see here now. And um, they had a Puerto Rican flag, they had a pride flag in the windows, but since, you know, as of recent, this was in March of 2025. There's no longer there, as you can see. It's just very sad. I've read some of the articles where the people, other people who were staying at that motel, which they call it like the bottom of the barrel hotel, like nobody really goes there. Um, and it's a lot of sex offenders live there. There's people who's on the verge of being homeless living there. There's, it's the last stop shop. But they don't know how this came to be, um, but we're gonna dive deep. Let's go, let's go. Law enforcement officers were called to the hotel where authorities say Sam Nordquist was tortured to death at least 8 times. Throughout his captivity, sheriff's office call records obtained by NBC News. Deputies from the Ontario County Sheriff's Office went to Patty's Lodge, Daigua, New York, in January to perform 2 welfare checks at the hotel, respond to 3 instances of family trouble, address a neighbor dispute, complete a probation check, and issue a warrant for an unnamed individual's arrest. According to the call records. Okay, so however, none of those calls specifically reference room 22, where Nordquist 24 was allegedly held captive from January 1st to February 2nd. Side note, this is where people are saying like, no, the motel people need to be responsible, but they're backing off. They're like, this isn't our say, we don't. But if they're not contacting direct and it's hitting your main line, yeah. You're supposed to house people. That is your responsibility to know what's going on. No, that is okay. We're back. Okay, was okay. Ontario County Sheriff David J told NBC News shortly after his story was published. Norquist was beaten, sexually assaulted, and starved by 7 people in room 22 before he died from his injuries, prosecutors said last week. The call records do not indicate which rooms authorities visited, and it's unclear whether anyone heard anything, but anyone on the property we would be within several dozen feet of room 22. The hotel is on a small lot of land with about 2 dozen rooms grouped by 4 one-story buildings. Patty's Lodge could not immediately be reached for comment. In recent weeks, the gruesome killing of the 24-year-old transgender black man has garnered national attention and prompted outrage from LGBTQ advocates across the country. Prosecutors have said there appears to be no indication that witnesses heard any of the abuse in room 22, though it went on for weeks and involved multiple people. No one reported any suspicious activity at the hotel, officials said. The Ontario County District Attorney's Office did not immediately return a request for comment regarding the call logs. Nordquist's family, who live in Oakdale, Minnesota, requested a wellness check to room 22 while Nordquist was still alive in October. New York State Police Troop E confirmed that they completed the wellness check, adding that Sam told the trooper he was fine, and Sam told the trooper he was fine and did not need any medical or law enforcement help. The family again requested a welfare check to Patty's Lodge on February 9th and reported him missing to their local Oakdale police on February 10th, the family said. His body was found 3 days later in a field not far from Patty's Lodge, wrapped in plastic bags, prosecutors said last week. Prosecutors detailed last week that 7 people, including Norquist's girlfriend, are accused of kicking, punching, starving, and sexually assaulting him, and forcing him to consume feces, urine, and tobacco juice. 2 young children were also coerced to join in, according to the indictment. The 7 were arrested and charged with first-degree murder and face life in prison without parole if convicted. On Tuesday, they all pleaded not guilty to the charges. So that was NBC News. Dive in. What's a wellness check, right? We gotta dive into that. A welfare check occurs when officers visit an individual's home to assess their safety. Typically, they knock on the door, speak with the person inside, and check for signs of danger. If necessary, they may request to enter or call for medical assistance. It's given they didn't do a thorough check. They just got to say that on there and to cover their ass. You know, if you just, if the suspect is inside, the perpetrator, the person who's controlling the situation, which was not Sam, it was his girlfriend, and you're asking these questions in front of that person, you're putting Sam in danger. Because look, 3 days later after that, look what happened. There's people saying that they should have talked to Sam separate outside the room, more secure. Yeah. So I had to dive into that. We had to dive in a little bit in that. Now, this is by security.org. Anti-LGBT hate crimes are rising. This is by Eliza Vidgerman. This was updated May 8th, 2025. Hate crimes targeting LGBT individuals have climbed for the past 4 straight years, according to data published by the FBI. While such hate crimes do not account for the majority of all hate crimes reported by the FBI, racially motivated hate crimes are by far the most common. The fact that such incidents are growing more frequent is a cause for concern and special attention. The long history of violence against gay men, lesbians, bisexuals, and the transgender and gender nonconforming community is becoming increasingly well understood, but it shows no sign of stopping. Furthermore, transgender people of color are disproportionately affected. In 2024, 78% of transgender homicides involved victims of color, and 56% were Black transgender women, according to the Human Rights Campaign. While not all of those killings were resulted of hate-inspired violence, their deaths highlighted their increased risk that many members of the LGBT plus community face. If we take part, if we take apart the FBI's most recent hate crimes publication, individuals who identify as LGBT plus are more likely to become hate crime victims than African Americans, Hispanics, Asians, Muslims, or Jews. How has the picture of hate crimes targeting the LGBT community changed over the years? And where are such crimes most common across the country? To better understand the prevalence of these incidents, we'll examine the FBI's data on hate crimes against LGBT individuals, but we'll also explore the limitations of that data, including why it's possible that the FBI could be underestimating hate crimes against all targeted groups by as much as 96%. Anti-LGBT incidents on the rise. Generally speaking, hate crimes in the United States are on the rise. With that, anti-LGBT crimes are increasing as well. There is some hope, though. According to FBI data, the proportion of hate crimes targeting members of the LGBT community among all hate crimes have fallen in the past few years. However, that doesn't discount the fact that anti-LGBT hate crimes are still at an all-time high. If we take a longer view, we can see that the proportion of hate crimes targeting LGBT individuals has gone up by more than 1/3 since the late 1990s. The FBI defines these incidents as being motivated by bias against the group in question. The percentages listed here include crimes motivated by the presence or perceived presence of a victim who was gay, lesbian, bisexual, LGBT, transgender, or gender nonconforming. Until 2013, no specific categories existed for trans or gender nonconforming individuals. Figure includes all incidents, which may consist of more than one offense and or multiple victims. The ratio of anti-LGBT incidents among all hated motivated incidents reached its peak in 2013, when more than 1 in 5 bias motivated incidents involved victims who were LGBT plus or were perceived as such. Since then, the proportion of anti-LGBT incidents among all hated motivated incidents has fallen, with the rate falling about 10% between 2016 and 2017 alone. Gay men are more likely than other members of the LGBT community to be targeted in hate motivated incidents, with more than half of incidents motivated by anti-LGBT sentiment targeting gay men. But this ratio has fallen over the past few years and is down from more than 60% in 2013. Until 2013, the FBI The FBI data did not collect data on hate crimes targeting transgender or gender nonconforming people, so for comparison's sake, we've included only the past 5 years. Incidents targeting Black people are the most common among all hate motivated incidents, but members of the LGBT community are more likely than any targeted group to be victimized by hate incidents when accounting for each other's representation in the overall U.S. population. For instance, while more incidents target African Americans than any other group, there are more than 43 million Black Americans compared with an estimated 11.4 million Americans who identify as LGBT, meaning that victims of hate motivated incidents are more likely to be LGBT than Black. This figure was calculated by dividing the number of victims in each group by their overall estimated numbers in the U.S. population and multiplying by 100,000. Where in the U.S where in the US are anti-LGBT hate crimes most common? Before we can discuss how frequently the LGBT community is targeted by hate incidents in various states and cities, it's important to understand one of the major limitations with the FBI's data. Many law enforcement agencies do not report such crimes to the FBI, and even the very definition of what constitutes a hate crime varies from state to state and often city to city. Even incidents that the FBI itself has investigated sometimes are not included when the agency releases its data, and for other states, their low numbers strain credulity. Law enforcement agencies in Alabama, for instance, reported just 9 bias-motivated incidents took place in the state. Compare that to the 379 incidents reported in Kentucky, which is similar in population to Alabama. Hawaii collects its own data that the FBI does not include in its report, and the state said only 3 credible hate crimes incidents took place. More than half the states reported fewer than 10 hate crimes that targeted LGBT individuals, though only 4 states said none took place. A total of 31 states, according to the FBI, had no incidents targeting trans or gender nonconforming individuals. Still, California had by far the highest number of incidents targeting all LGBT people. After adjusting population differences, California drops, but not by much. Overall, in the US, bias motivated incidents target LGBT people at a population adjusted rate of about 0.337 per 100,000, which means that the majority of states have rates lower than the national rate. Well, while the rate is highest in the District of Columbia, that's likely owing largely to the fact that DC has a relatively large LGBT population, but a small population overall. Another way of understanding how prevalent anti-LGBT incidents are in each state is to look at these incidents relative to all hate-motivated incidents. In other words, of a state's hate-motivated crimes or incidents, what percentage targeted the LGBT community? These figures include all incidents based on sexual orientation, which folds in a small number of crimes targeting straight identifying people, but they are nonetheless quite interesting. In both Nevada and Wyoming, at least 1 in 2 hate motivated incidents targeted people based either on their sexual orientation or gender expression. Nationally, this rate is about 17%, putting 21 states over the total U.S. level, excluding Washington, D.C. Seattle has the highest rate of hate crime incidents targeting LGBT people among large cities for which data has available. Again, our analysis is limited by the fact that not all enforcement agencies report data, and we limited our analysis to large cities, at least 250,000 in population, in which any hate crime data was reported. 2 of the cities which with the highest rates are in Ohio, while 2 others are in California. But that's not the whole story, right? While we can see from what the FBI has reported that hate motivated incidents targeting the LGBT community have become more commonplace over the past half decade, we really don't know the full scope of the issue. That's for a variety of reasons. First, most people who are targeted by bias motivated actions or words do not report what's happened to the police, whether because they don't think it whether they don't think it rises to the level of a crime, they fear not being believed or being the victim of retaliation, or they simply choose not to participate in the legal process. Second, as we've discussed, much of the data from the FBI just sort of feels off and seems to fail the sniff test. Plus, the FBI ignores the data it gets from Hawaii. Third, there is no one single national definition of what a hate crime is. Not at all. Laws are the same across the states, and there's not always agreement about which groups should be protected. It wasn't until 2013 that trans people and those who are gender nonconforming were even included. So, what is the true figure? How common are hate crimes targeting the LGBT community? According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, which publishes an annual self reported survey on criminal victimization, more than 200,000 people are victimized by hate crimes in a given year. That's well over 25 times higher than the bias motivated figures the FBI reports. Not only that, but the BJS figures indicated that a higher percentage of hate crimes targeted LGBT individuals to the tune of nearly 26%. If true, that would mean the FBI's data is undercounting the prevalence of anti-LGBT crimes by more than 70%. Conclusion: July 1st, 2019 marked the 50th anniversary of the ending of the Stonewall Uprising, seen by many as the spark that ignited the modern gay rights movement in the US. The first gay pride marches were conducted the following summer, and while there's no doubt that much has changed since the police pounded on the door of the Stonewall Inn in New York City's Greenwich Village, for many members of the LGBT community, violence and harassment, even the specter of murder, are still a part of their daily lives. It may no longer be a crime in this country to be gay, but hate crimes against LGBT people are on the rise, and members of that community are now the most likely of any group to be victims of hate motivated attacks. For those who are LGBT plus, that probably doesn't feel like progress. About this story, as mentioned, the bulk of our data came from the Federal Bureau of Investigation's annual hate crime publication. These reports can be accessed, and there's a link there. Hawaii's data was retrieved from the reports found here. Not all victims of the incidents reported by the FBI are U.S. residents. But to calculate how common it is for various groups to be targeted, we use various reported and estimated figures of the size of each population. Several sources were consulted, including the U.S. Census Bureau Research Center, the UCLA Law Williams Institute, and Gallup. So, yeah, go check that out. I'll leave this here for y'all to dive in on your own. Here's the hate. I looked on FBI.gov hate crimes. Looked it up. I was like, okay, what are we dealing with when we talk about a hate crime? Hate crimes are the highest priority of the FBI's civil rights program because of the devastating impact they have on the families and communities. The Bureau investigates hundreds of these cases every year, and we work to detect and prevent incidents through law enforcement training, public outreach, and partnerships with community groups. Traditionally, FBI investigations of hate crimes were limited to crimes in which the perpetrators acted against on a bias against the victim's race, color, religion, or national origin. In addition, investigations were restricted to those wherein the victim was engaged in a federally protected activity. The FBI investigated what are now called hate crimes as far back as World War I. Our role increased following the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Before then, the federal government took the position that protection of civil rights was a local function, not a federal one. However, the murders of civil rights workers Michael Schwerner, Andrew Goodman, and James Chaney um, near Philadelphia, Mississippi in June 1964 provided the impetus for a visible and sustained federal effort to protect and foster civil rights for African Americans. The case, known as Mississippi Burning, became the largest federal investigation ever conducted in Mississippi. On October 20th, 1967, seven men were convicted of conspiring to violate the constitutional rights of the slain civil rights workers. All seven were sentenced to prison terms ranging from 3 to 10 years. Defining a hate crime is a traditional offense like murder, arson, or vandalism, with an added element of bias. For the purposes of collecting statistics, the FBI has defined a hate crime as a criminal offense against a person or property motivated in whole or in part by an offender's bias against race, religion, disability, sexual orientation, ethnicity, gender, or gender identity. Hate itself is not a crime, and the FBI is mindful of protecting freedom of speech and other civil liberties. Thriving Trans Men of Color's post, they posted this on February 18th. Shout out to Thriving Trans Men of Color. I'm a part of that group. Good vibes over there. They always have good information. So go check them out if you're of color and you're trans man, you identify as a trans man, go over there and they'll support you and you can support each other. It's a nice group. Nice group. They reposted the gay family values. Sam Nordquist does not look like Matthew Shepard. He's not white, blonde, mainstream magazine, handsome, and gay. But Sam's torture and death over a month's time in a motel room merits the same national outrage that followed Matthew's torture and death. But Sam won't get it. He'll be forgotten, as are all the transgender people who are murdered every year. Sam excitedly flew from Minnesota to New York to finally meet his online girlfriend, Precious Arzuaga, a at a motel. Instead of being cuddled, he was savagely beaten, verbally abused, and repeatedly raped with the leg of a table for over a month. The description of the ordeal makes me sick, as did Matthew's last hours. When Sam died, his online girlfriend and four of her friends dropped him naked in an open field. It was only a call from Sam's concerned sister that alerted the police. One of the most horrific crimes I've ever imagined, said the police investigator. Sam was just 24. He was a person of color, heavy-set, assigned female at birth, but identified as male. He was no Matthew Shepard, no poster boy. While Matthew knew his assailants that left him tied to a split rail fence, bludgeoned with the butt of a gun, Sam only knew his online girlfriend, Precious, and not the four others who joined her in kicking and punching him day and night for several weeks. Why did these young strangers hate him so much? Why did his online girlfriend lure him to the motel room? We owe it to Sam to keep making a big fuss with social media posts and huge memorial services. Don't let this man who represents hundreds of other transgender people murdered yearly who died in a motel torture chamber be forgotten. Confront the trans hatred Confront the trans hatred coming from Trump, Musk, Vance, and other Republicans. Use Sam's face, name, and the circumstances of his death. Let's not forget Sam Nordquist. There's a comment that says, the worst thing is that incident held a few similarities as the Brandon Tina ordeal. Please share the fact that trans men do face hate and have been unalived during the hate. Sam did not deserve to be treated in any way, and those that placed harm and took his life should be thoroughly punished. Precious was the person who lured Sam. Felicia Robbins once dated Precious Arzuaga, one of seven people indicted on a first-degree murder charge in the torture death of Sam Nordquist, a 24-year-old transgender man. Robin talks about the abusive relationship she experienced with Arzuaga in 2021 when they dated in the hometown of Geneva in New York.
You feel some type of way that you mean everything to her and like you're the best thing ever. She can make you feel that. but she can also destroy it too. I know Precious from when I was 13, well, 14. That's when I moved like right down the street from her. And she was like 11 years old, I believe. She lived with her grandmother, her and her sister. I know that they got in trouble quite a bit, but I didn't really hang out with them all too much. I've moved to Geneva several times, so we've ran into each other several times throughout the years. And we ended up getting together in 2021. It's all right in 6 month period. We'd only break up for just a couple days or hours. I mean, it was just, she'd always talk her way back in. Our time together was um, fun at first. You know, the first couple weeks it was good, but like the first time we went to bed, the first kiss was like it's so explosive, and well, I'm so in love with you. I noticed right away, like I didn't really care too much of how she talked to her kids or how dirty her trailer was. The toilet, you had to dump water down it to flush. She did the dishes in the tub because she didn't have no water or stove or anything that worked. There was so much clutter everywhere. Porch full of garbage. The front was full of garbage. If you go by there right now, there's still literally garbage just all over it. They tore it down, but the guys swear they left some of the garbage behind. The stove didn't work. The fridge didn't work. There was a fridge that was taped up with old crap in it. Our main issues started when I let her use my car one day. Like that's when she put her hands on me for the first time. She pushed me up against that fridge and choked me. And like I could hardly breathe, right? And then finally, like I pushed her off me. Like, what the hell? She wanted me to stay at the trailer with her, and I didn't want to stay at the trailer because it was nasty. And I was on probation and drug court, so I couldn't stay there with her all the time. But she couldn't stay with me neither because if I lose my DSS, I lose my income. I stayed at that hotel, Patty's Lodge. Somebody brought her to the hotel, her and the kids. And then she stayed there for like a week with me. When we get in arguments, it was always, about my addiction or how I was a fat bitch because I used to weigh almost 300 pounds. And then once things would calm down or whatever the case may be, she like sweet talk her way back in. I wish Sam could have got away, you know, and I'm and he just seemed like an amazing person. Like that's the reason why I'm doing this because man, it's sad what happened.
The seven suspects accused of torturing and killing Sam Nordquist were just arraigned in court.
They each face first-degree murder charges. They all pled not guilty. Isabel Garcia was in the courtroom. She joins us now live from Canandaigua with more. Isabel.
Yes, good evening to both of you. This is the first time that the defendants were in the public eye in this open court today. It was a pretty packed courtroom inside the Ontario County Courthouse. Each of the seven people accused in these horrific crimes pled not guilty, as you mentioned, to the charges they faced, the highest of which is murder in the first degree. Now, Precious Arzuaga was the first person arraigned. She came out to the courtroom in an orange jumpsuit, but was the only defendant in that. She, along with five other defendants, also in handcuffs and a waist chain. All seven pleaded not guilty to the charges, and all seven were remanded to jail, no bail, no release. Seven local individuals are accused of torturing and killing Sam Nordquist, a transgender man from Minnesota. Each are also facing child endangerment charges after the district attorney's office recently announced there were two children present and coerced to participate in some of the heinous acts, ages 12 and 7. Now, I'm told it is pretty typical. An order of protection was granted by the judge for the two children, applicable for all of the defendants, this meaning no contact permitted whatsoever. We had the chance to speak with the defense attorney for one of the defendants, Thomas Eves, along with the district attorney, Jim Ritz, about what happens next.
Mr. Ritz has now indicated that It's going to be at least 1 terabyte of evidence and maybe 2. So as you can imagine, even at my gray hair, I recognize that's a lot of information. And so, we're going to need some time, obviously, to go over that and discover what it is and how it implicates our individual clients or not.
We have an obligation to make sure that we don't poison the jury pool. We're going to be very cautious about the things we say. Certainly, it's still an ongoing investigation as well. So there's a lot to do and a lot of work to do. And we want to make sure we're able to try these people with a jury of their peers in a fair setting.
Now, of course, there are a lot of future court dates set. There's a lot of discovering pre-trial hearings and motion hearings as well. It's much too early, I'm told, at this stage to determine whether or not this case will move to a trial with all 7 defendants, or if each of the accused will be tried separately. There are, as I mentioned, the several future court dates set, with the trial date set for this case tentatively scheduled for early September. We will, of course, continue to follow any further developments as it evolves. For now, reporting live in Canandaigua, Isabel Garcia, News 8.
New details in the torture of a transgender man in Ontario County. The 7 people charged in Sam Nordquist's death have all been indicted on first-degree murder.
It specifically requires that we prove that all 7 defendants tortured Sam Nordquist and that they did so because they enjoyed it. That's what murder in the first degree is.
All evening, we have been walking you through what a prosecutor called a death by torture. Tonight, you're going to hear from a friend of Sam's. But first, News 10 NBC's Christy Blake takes us through the charges outside the place where state police say that torture happened.
Police now confirming Sam Nordquist was abused, tortured, and murdered here at Patty's Lodge in room 22.
They did so because they enjoyed it. That's what murder in the first degree is.
The 11-count indictment was released today, detailing the abuse Sam went through.
He was denied proper nutrition and hydration. He was fed feces. He was forced to drink urine and chew spit.
Police say once this group got a hold of Sam, they never let him leave Patty's Lodge alone.
Our understanding is he came here on his own free will and was staying at Patty's Lodge on his own free will when this began.
Investigators are not pointing fingers at any one suspect as the ringleader, instead saying they plan on proving the entire group played their own role in the murder. The group also faces sexual abuse and conspiracy charges.
There's also a charge of concealment of a human corpse because, as we all have heard previously, Sam's body was removed from 22 Patty's Lodge and taken to Gates County, where he was dumped out on the side of the road in a farmer's field, wrapped in plastic bags, where they hoped no one would find him.
What was once a memorial site for Sam now looks like it's been all cleared. There used to be flags in room 22's windows. Those have also been removed. Sam was buried on Monday. His family is flying to New York City today because it's somewhere he always wanted to visit. Reporting from Patty's Lodge in Canandaigua, Christy Blake, News 10 NBC.
We have a deep dive of each defendant on our website. WHEC.com is where you can see that. At least 3 suspects have a criminal history. 2 of the suspects were on parole at the time of Sam's death. Now, the first-degree murder charge these suspects are facing would qualify for the death penalty if New York had one. Chief investigative reporter Berkeley Breen spoke with a criminal defense lawyer about why that is.
Roughly half of the states have the death penalty right now. 23 states have the death penalty. 23 do not. Why do you think New York?
New York State has always been very concerned about, number one, incorrectly executing an innocent person. But number 2, that the laws are executed uniformly and fairly across the board.
Do you ever see it coming back to New York? Ever?
I don't see it coming back to New York in the capacity or in the context that it once existed. I do see the New York authorities working with the federal counterpart.
You don't have burnout. It's called cortisol addiction. Waking up at 3 a.m., unable to fall back asleep, sudden feelings of anxiety and depression, fatigued from overworking yourself.
Now to a case that has been getting national attention. Today we are learning more about some of the suspects charged with allegedly murdering a transgender man from Minnesota in New York. Joe McCoy has the details.
Morgan, we want to warn viewers that this case is disturbing. Today, we learned that at least 2 of the suspects have a criminal history that includes sexual assault of minors and distribution of child pornography. This adding yet another layer to an already twisted and horrifying case. We uncover new details tonight on the alleged killers of Sam Nordquist from Oakdale, Minnesota. According to the New York State Sex Offender Registry, Patrick Goodwin, one of the 5 suspects charged with second-degree murder in Sam's death, was sentenced to 10.5 years in prison in 2015 for first-degree sexual abuse against a 7-year-old boy and a 9-year-old girl. He was released from prison in 2023.
These people that did this to Sam are pure evil. They're not even human.
Sam's mom, Linda, still can't wrap her head around how these people could allegedly do such a heinous crime to her son.
We were really close. We used to get in the vehicle, go driving around and dream and look at these rich houses. That was our thing.
According to the Sex Offender Registry, Goodwin lived at Patty's Lodge Motel in Hopewell, New York. This is where, according to court documents, Sam was tortured and killed sometime between January 1st and February 2nd.
I don't understand, and I never will, ever. I don't get it. And I'm so heartbroken. I'm numb.
Another suspect, Kyle Sage, was sentenced to 2 to 4 years in prison in 2022 for fourth-degree grand larceny and first-degree distribution of pornography to a minor, according to the New York State Department of Corrections. He was released from prison in May of last year. Investigators have not commented yet on the relationship Sam had with the 5 suspects. According to Sam's mom, Sam had traveled to New York in September to meet his online girlfriend, Precious Arzuaga, who was one of the 5 suspects. He had a plane ticket to come back to Minnesota in October, but never returned home. All 5 of the suspects are in the Ontario County Jail in New York. We reached out to both the county's attorney and New York State Police about the charges and when the suspects will be in court next, but have not heard back yet.
Yeah, y'all. Thanks for tuning in. My heart goes out to Sam's family, to Sam's mom, Sam's sister. I'm gonna leave all of the information to connect with them and support them. You know, if you can in the comments, just show some love to Sam and Sam's family, however that, that brings to you. But rest in peace to Sam. My heart goes out to Sam, and it's hard. It's hard, and it sucks that Sam had to go through this. Just my little bit, then I'll let y'all go. But because a lot of times people like go outside, and it's so many reasons why people might not go outside, especially trans men specifically. And from stories, it's looking like she's seeking out people to harm. There's one more person. There was a guy that they had a child with that he got abused by her and when he was trying to leave. And so this is a cycle. And it should be also listed as a hate crime. Add the first degree, the highest, yeah, but also add the hate crime because I know they had said like, oh, this is more than a hate crime. This is bigger. We shouldn't. I get that. Put that and then add that. Like, what are we even talking? You can add charges, and I think hate should be added because when you don't add hate to it, you're saying, "Oh, this is okay. Isn't as serious." It should be added as well. Be safe out there and just be careful, And the story itself, reading it was hard, really hard for me. I almost was gonna push it for another day. Like maybe I should do just, keep pushing these reviews and this and that. And I know I understand why, I'm gonna keep pushing this, even though it's hard. It's important to do it. I just encourage y'all to share this video, go support Sam's family, give them love, encouragement, and go use your voice. Use your voice. That's all I really have right now. We're gonna keep focusing on the story, um, keep focusing on Sam's story, and keep his name alive. Say his name, and that's what I got for y'all. Thanks for listening. Like, comment, subscribe, but most importantly, share this video to someone who you feel like could receive this well and needs it. You know, I know at a time where exposing oneself, just having a channel, but the importance of it and the love I get back from it, the people who say keep going, this is needed. Shout out to y'all. Y'all know who you are. I appreciate the love. And once again, we're gonna leave some space at the end for Sam and other people who have fallen in the hands of hate just for being who they are.